Hi students, welcome to lesson number 14 on types of social mobility. Now the introduction. Human society is defined by social stratification, which divides the entire society into a macro hierarchical order in the first instance and places all individuals in a different vertical order, high and low, depending on their appraisal and ranking. Social formations such as social classes, caste, estates, ethnic and racial groups are represented by variously situated groups in an order of high to low. These are also referred to as different types of social stratification. Despite the fact that these social formations are historical entities with historicity, they can be observed and found in operation in a fluid form even in modern human civilization. There are multiple micro hierarchical orders inside the macro hierarchical order that encompasses the entire society with further divisions based on relative positions, socio-economic power and authority commanded by individuals within the order. Individuals are ranked and rated according to the social value scale in the micro hierarchical order as well. Any change in the value scale as well as mobility of individuals and organization has an impact on changes in hierarchical order and social status. Similarly, while ranking and rating persons, their occupational status, income and other traits such as social prestige as well as their regard in society at different times are taken into account. Such changes are glaringly obvious in human culture. Members of the priestly class earned high status under monarchy or during the feudal era. During those eras in Europe and India, they were rated higher than members of other social classes. However, as a country's political structure shifted from monarchy to democracy, their standing began to deteriorate. In today's world, the priestly class does not enjoy the same high standing as it did in the past due to changes in the political and economic system. A priest has less status than a doctor or an engineer. Similarly, a person's prestige rises when he becomes a minister from a common shopkeeper. If, on the other hand, the minister quits his job and returns to his former store, he loses his ministerial standing. As a result, it is worth noting that people in society continue to move up and down the status scale as the society's ideals change. This movement of people and the groups from low to high and high to low in a given social structure is called social mobility. And the objectives of the lessons are that the students will be able to understand or grasp the various types and forms of mobility. They can understand the nature of social mobility and also find out the measurement of social mobility. What is social mobility? The concept of social mobility denotes not only the movement of people in society's hierarchical order, but also the amount of unity and solidarity amongst its citizens. In fact, it is thought to be a sign of the establishment of social classes as well as the collapse of society. According to Anthony Giddens, a society with the bare minimum of social mobility has a higher level of social cohesion. The notion has a variety of meanings. It must therefore be distinguished from other types of human movement, particularly movement from one location to another, that is migration, which is a movement over a geographical space and is also known as spatial mobility. This movement can be from village to the town, from the town to the city, from one region to another region and from one country to another country. It is referred to as a lateral mobility by Anthony Giddens and is also known as geographical movement across neighborhoods, towns and regions. Geometrical mobility refers to a movement that involves a change in geographic location, change in direction and so on. Now, what is the nature of social mobility? The nature of social mobility is one of the most essential topics to comprehend. This raises the question of whether social mobility is a self-caused phenomena or is influenced by socio-cultural, economic and political elements or forces embedded in the social system and structure. In other words, the causation of social mobility is another question connected to its character. To fully comprehend the causes of social mobility, a two-step examination is required. That is, the theoretical framework that explains the process of change and the resulting alterations in people's lives is referred to as the first. The second section also looks at the empirical research on social mobility and the causes that support it. So, there are two sociological theories for dealing with social change that leads to social mobility, and the first category comprises the ideas that describe change as a natural occurrence that leads to changes in the overall structure of society, such as patterns of social interactions across time. So, the changes in the social order, level of material development and social attitudes have an impact on social interactions. Human society is thought to be defined by social evolution. So, certain natural forces and principles are part of the process of social evolution. It is claimed that the human organism is the most agile being on the planet, with incredible adaptability and adapting qualities to the environment in which he is placed. It is because of this natural aptitude that man has been able to adapt and survive for thousands of years in ever changing environments. Auguste Comte, a French sociologist, claims that there are certain inherent principles or laws at work in the cosmos that causes societal change. The advancement of human knowledge and mind, as well as the emergence of corresponding material phases, social order, the construction of the fundamental social unit, sentiments and concerns proven to be progressive in nature and elevated man above his prior circumstances of existence. This is a type of mobility that occurs throughout the course of generations of humans, sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously. The population is another natural aspect that has influenced human life. Emile Durkheim, a pioneer sociologist, discusses the relationship between population growth and the calculation of societal requirements. Although population growth is a natural feature, the process of meeting growing requirement leads to a division of labor in society, result in diversification in the first instance and eventually a division of society into hierarchically ordered order. The ability that occurs in this process appears to be both upward and downward, according to an examination of the process. To put it another way, the shift from horizontal to vertical divisions transforms society from a more or less equal to an unequal one. Particularly after Darwin, evolutionary theory became a prominent approach for interpreting social developments. It was proposed by him that natural selection occurs in which the fittest survive and the weak are eliminated. Evolutionary thinkers from Herbert Spencer to Talcott Parsons have all used this concept. In the context of social mobility, the primary thesis that emerges is that biological levels establishes two separate formations in society. One group can survive healthily and adapt better to their environment, whereas other is either eliminated owing to a lack of adaptability or persist and perpetuate starvation, sickness, poverty and so on. They are at the top and bottom of the society's valuing scale respectively. When movement occurs between the two as a result of changes in biological fitness level, it results in upward or downward mobility. Some evolution theorists have concluded that society as a whole moves in a cyclic pattern. Human society goes through specific cycles of birth, growth, maturity and decay, according to Spengler, the guy who formulated this theory. Each step of the cycle represents a social order and the people that make up that order. Despite the fact that Spengler makes no mention of social mobility, the argument has two apparent consequences. First, as a society and its main activities and characteristics expand, there must be certain modification in the social order as the cycle progresses, that is from birth to growth. Second, the expansion must result in social segment changes. It is difficult to determine what type of mobility would have existed under a system of change, but it is safe to assume that throughout the period of growth, the society must have experienced upward mobility. The social formations must have stabilized and begun a downward tendency, claiming the decay phase at this stage of development, because history repeats itself. The process of change not only in society but also in human states continues to experience upward and downward mobility according to the cycle theory. The second is a set of theoretical perspectives showing that change is driven by socio-economic and political processes in society, which eventually affect changes in individuals and groups placed in society. Changes in society generated by human action that promotes vertical movement across social formation can be referred to in this sense. The shift in the structure of capitalism from an industrial to a post-industrial society generated classes within classes, and some of the classes that have previously occupied low social positions in the hierarchy gained increased social status as a result of the divide. There is also a shift in social structure which completely transformed the society. In actuality, Marx's concept of the proletariat overthrowing the bourgeoisie refers to a structural shift that will eventually replace the existing social order. As a result, previously powerless and privileged social classes rise to new heights and achieve upward mobility. Certain groups' downward mobility cannot be ruled out during this process, especially when they lose power and advantages. Now, we try to understand the various types of social mobility. It is found that social mobility and its nature does not only constitute the movement of individuals and the groups in the social scale or hierarchy, but is also connected with power and privileges. The entire issue in fact involves the social structure and the social system of the society, which also get affected to various changes occurring in the society. In social stratification, the movement occurs in three directions, that is from lower to higher, from higher to lower, between two positions at the same level. It is also inferred that social mobility is not of one type, but also has multiple dimensions. Mobility has been classified as vertical and horizontal mobility, open and closed mobility, intergeneration mobility, intrageneration mobility. What is horizontal mobility? The concept of horizontal mobility refers to that movement in the life of an individual during which he or she changes residence or job without experiencing any change in the social status. For instance, any officer transferred from one place to another place in the same rank, and a pay or a teacher leaving one school to working another, or even a factory worker leaving one factory and joining another without affecting any change in his status, it is called as horizontal mobility. Increasing differentiation in a given organization or system of production without affecting changes in the statuses of the individual incumbents can be considered another example of horizontal mobility in a society. Second, the vertical mobility. Vertical mobility refers to movement up and down the socio-economic scale. Those who gain in property, income or status are said to be upward mobile, while those who move in the opposite direction are downwardly mobile. Anthony Giddens argues that the amount of vertical mobility is in a society is a major index of its openness. It also reflects on the talents and skills in the society, enabling people to move up during their lifespan. Since it has been argued that social mobility concerned with gain and loss of social, economic and power attributes the vertical mobility. Therefore, is also understood in major 3 or any of the 3 areas of living, that is class, occupation and power, involving status change. Now, what is the open and closed system? The difference between an individual achieved and ascribed status is measured by his mobility up or down. The openness of the system is mostly related to the industrial production system. It was founded after the fall of the feudal system in which labor and movement were restricted. The capitalist industrial system of production liberated labor by allowing it to move freely in the market. This open system mobility has allowed for free movement of labor as well as opportunities for social mobility and status change. There is no formal recognition of status fixation. In such a system, status may be attained. Mobility is a system of stratification guided by free market, economy and competition, and an individual can increase his status and position at his leisure. Individuals have been able to attain status based on their accomplishments and thanks to urban living condition, intense division of labor and quick social change. On the other hand, in a closed society or social stratification, social rank is determined by birth or caste. So, it is impossible to change one's caste because it is determined by society. So, as a process for determining status, ascription results in the formation of various degrees of status based on sex, religion and caste. In such a system, those who constitute this socially favored and enjoy power and privileges often prevent the entry of the people from the lower groups. Such a system represents a closed model of society, limiting the chance of mobility. The Indian caste system is considered as an example of closed system in which once the individual was born could hardly escape his caste. It is also argued that even if the change would take place, it was a positional change, a movement within the strata and change of status in the overall hierarchy of the society. Now, what is contest mobility? Contest mobility is a system in which elite status is a prize in an open contest and is taken by the aspirants on efforts. The term elite is used by Turner in a simplified sense to mean high class category. While the contest is governed by some rules of fair play, the contestants have wide choices in the strategies they may employ. Since the prize of success, upward mobility is not in the hands of an established elite to give out, the latter cannot determine who shall attain it and who shall not. Another is the sponsored mobility. It is one where the established elite or their agents recruit individuals into their fold. In this case, elite status is given on the basis of some criterion of supposed merit and cannot be taken by any amount of effort or strategy. Upward mobility is like entry into a private club where each candidate must be sponsored by one or more the members. Ultimately, the members grant or deny upward mobility on the basis of whether they judge the candidate to have these qualities they do see in fellow members. Now, what is intergenerational mobility? It refers to mobility across the generations or between generations, that is, movement between two generations. It refers to how far the children have been able to transcend the occupational status of their father, or alternatively to what extent change in the status has taken place between a father's generations and a son's generation. With the opening of the society and expansion of economic opportunities, there are significant changes that have taken place between the occupational structures of two generations. This is often observed that parental occupation is generally not followed by the succeeding generations, especially in the middle level status categories. However, in the case of lucrative and high category status like the doctors, lawyers, businessmen, bureaucrats and politicians and other such categories, the sons and daughters may follow their parents' occupational pursuits. The same may also be true of low category of occupation, but it depends upon the degree of openness of the system, the degree to which it allows change. In case the son of a farmer becomes civil servant or a business executive, this will be a case of intergenerational mobility. With the change in occupation, the son move up in the ladder of social scale, occupation being an important criteria of status determination. The present day industrial society is marked by intergenerational mobility. What is intragenerational mobility? Along with intergenerational mobility that looks into the movement across the generations, there is also concern among the sociologists to view to what extent there has also taken place change in the status of an individual up or down the social scale. The study of such a movement in the same generation is called intragenerational mobility. Melvin Truman discusses structural mobility and circular mobility also. The former is sometimes called forced mobility, means movement in and out of occupational categories. Sometimes the change in the occupational structure itself results in the change in the number of individuals in those occupational categories. Such changes also come out of the change in the process of production, change of technology that makes obsolete the existing skills of the working class and replaces them. Such changes also occur due to the change in the demographic structure or the demographic behavior of certain professional classes, producing less number of children. The circular mobility, on the contrary, refers to that mobility which becomes possible due to the opening up of the opportunity structure and creation of new employment avenues which were not earlier open to the people. This type of social mobility is caused by the change in the nature of the political system and the expansion of the civil liberties that enable the erstwhile disabled people to take up new positions. For instance, the Civil War in the USA ended discrimination against blacks and opened new opportunities for them. Similarly, with the implementation of affirmative policies or the reservation policies for the members of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, the segregation has been ended and they have been enabled to take up higher social and economic positions with power and privileges. In other words, any policy framework or any action that makes possible for the people to move into the jobs from which they or their ancestors were barred is called circular mobility. There are new economic and political developments Naturally, the social system must adapt to changing physical conditions, and such adaptations always involve some degree of social mobility. In addition, every culture allows for certain personal ambition. There would have been no advancement if this had not been the same case. Every system has different awards for different accomplishments, and man strives to obtain the greatest rewarded accomplishment. The conviction that people can legitimately advance through their own efforts is a foundation for societal progress, and a scale of values is connected to and based on the social scale. So, any group that raises its standards will raise its social standing, and without a doubt certain groups will attempt to improve. And as a result, the very system of varying valuation for different attributes encourages people to rise up the social status ladder. According to Henry M. Johnson, the following fundamental conditions make social mobility in a given society impossible. And the first precondition is the society's value scale, which determines social prestige. People tend to strive for specific attributes of accomplishment which they are socially appreciated in any system. There is no natural propensity for intellect and other types of native ability to be confined to the upper classes, and there is no persistent trend for intelligence and other types of native capacity to be confined to the upper classes. So, throughout history, there have been several examples of persons from modest socioeconomic backgrounds reaching to the top of society, because no system of production or technology is permanent and undergoes changes at varied rates of speed. Changes in the demand for different kinds of skills are also occurring. The common birth rate of each class never exactly fills all of the seats in the class due to fluctuating demographic behavior of the upper classes. It is worth noting that despite growing inequalities that obstruct equality of opportunity in society, a high level of mobility still exists in every society. Sociologists investigate this tendency in society and people to experience social mobility in order to get statistic and knowledge regarding the relative openness of a social structure. And as Anthony Giddens remarked, the more social mobility there is, the more open the class structure becomes, especially in an industrial country. Because industrial societies are more economically advanced, as has been the case with the world's developed societies. It is a most important element in determining a country's rate of mobility. So, there is a link between the economic development and industrialization, with the latter being linked to increased mobility. Malinowski argues that a socialist system needs economic development more than a capitalist one. Therefore, one of the immediate aims of the leaders of the socialist states was to reach the level of more advanced capitalist countries in the context of industrialization, urbanization, development of communication and spread of mass education. All such initiatives not only implied but also ensured social mobility in socialist countries as well as elsewhere. To summarize, it may be concluded that social mobility defined as an upward or downward movement in a society's hierarchical structure is strongly linked to the social, economic and political characteristics of individuals and groups. It manifests in a variety of ways and forms depending on the nature of society's socio-economic and political system. It should also be noted that while measuring social mobility is possible, the rate of social mobility is not uniform wherever in the world. It varies from country to country and from class to class within countries. It is not uniform even in the industrial countries. Division of labor and sex are two other correlates. differential rates of social mobility results from both. Thank you.